The light wasn't like anything I've ever seen before. It didn't shine on me. It shined through me. And when the angel spoke, the voice didn't come from outside. It resonated inside my chest. Like every cell in my body was hearing it at once. I wasn't looking for answers that night. I wasn't even particularly spiritual. But what happened to me changed everything I thought I knew about reality. I've never told the full story until now. Before I tell you what happened, you need to understand where I was in my life. 3 years ago, I was at my lowest point. My career was falling apart. I'd just gone through a painful breakup. And worst of all, I had just lost my mother to cancer. The grief was overwhelming. I felt completely untethered, like I was drifting through life with no purpose, no direction, and honestly, no hope. I was staying at my mom's house, going through her belongings, deciding what to keep and what to give away. It was early December, bitterly cold outside. The house felt so empty without her in it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The silence was deafening. Around 3 a.m., I got up. I went to sit in her favorite chair in the living room. The moonlight was streaming through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. I remember staring at a photograph of my mom and me on the mantle. I had this overwhelming feeling that I was completely alone in the world. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since I was a child, I prayed. It wasn't an elaborate prayer. I just whispered, "Please, I need help. I can't do this alone." At first, nothing happened, but then I felt it. A shift in the air. The room seemed to get warmer, though the heating wasn't on. A strange tingling sensation started at the back of my neck. I opened my eyes. I thought maybe I was having some kind of panic attack. That's when I noticed the light. It started as a faint glow in the corner of the room, like when sunlight hits a prism and creates those rainbow patterns on the wall. Except this light was moving, gathering itself together, becoming more concentrated. I froze completely. My first instinct was fear. Was I having a stroke? Hallucinating? But strangely, the fear quickly melted away. It was replaced by a profound sense of calm. The light continued to intensify, becoming brighter, but somehow not hurting my eyes. It started to take shape, not solid exactly, but not formless either. The closest I can describe it is like looking at someone underwater. You can make out the general form, but the edges are fluid, shifting, and then it was unmistakably there, a being of light, shaped like a person but taller, maybe 7 feet high. The center of this being was the brightest, almost white gold, but the edges radiated outward in waves, waves of blue and violet. Where a face should be, I could make out features, not exactly human, but somehow familiar, eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. I know how this sounds. If someone had told me this story before it happened, I would have thought they were making it up, or had dreamed it. But I was wide awake. I pinched myself. I blinked hard several times. The being remained, glowing softly in the darkness of my mother's living room. The most extraordinary part is what happened next. The room filled with a sound, like rushing water or wind, but it was absolutely silent at the same time. And then I heard a voice, but heard isn't the right word. I felt it resonating inside my chest, like every cell in my body was receiving the message directly. "You are not alone," the voice said. The words weren't in English, or any language I know, but somehow I understood them perfectly. "You have never been alone." I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just sat there, tears streaming down my face. The angel, because that's the only word I have for what this being was, moved closer. The light it emanated filled the entire room now, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. I could feel waves of what I can only describe as pure love radiating from it. Not romantic love, not familiar love, but something more fundamental, like the force that holds atoms together. It was overwhelming. Yet somehow, I wasn't afraid anymore. Your mother is at peace, the voice continued inside me. The pain you feel is the shadow of love, but love itself cannot be diminished. Not by distance, not by time, not even by death. I wanted to ask so many questions. Was my mom okay? Was there really an afterlife? Why me? Why now? But I couldn't form the words. It was like the angels sensed my thoughts. You seek purpose, it said. You will find it in helping others navigate their darkness. Your pain has carved spaces in you that can now be filled with light. This is the pattern of existence. Expansion through contraction. Growth through loss. The angel raised what seemed like an arm. The light shifted. Suddenly, I could see. I don't have words to describe it accurately. It was like seeing the connective tissue of reality, how everything and everyone is interconnected by invisible threads of energy or consciousness. For a moment, I understood everything, saw everything with perfect clarity. I saw how every moment of my life had led to this one, and how this moment would ripple outward, affecting countless others. The vision was beautiful beyond words. Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness now, but from awe. Remember this, the angel said. When you forget, as humans do, look for the light in others. It is the same light. We are all reflections of the same source. Then the angel did something unexpected. It extended its hand, not to touch me, but as if offering something. In its palm appeared a small spark of the same light that made up its form. Take this, the voice said, not as proof, but as a reminder. Trembling, I reached out my hand. As soon as the spark touched my palm, it disappeared. But I felt a surge of warmth travel up my arm and spread throughout my body. In that moment, I felt completely embraced by an unconditional love that defies description. It was like being held by the universe itself. You will doubt this happened, the angel said. I could have sworn there was a hint of gentle amusement in its voice. That is the nature of human existence, to forget and remember again and again. But a part of you will always know the truth. The light began to fade, not diminishing, but rather expanding outward, becoming thinner and more diffuse, until it seemed to merge with the air itself. The last words I heard were, "You are more than you know. All of you are." And then it was gone, just like that. The room returned to normal, the moonlight through the window, the photograph on the mantel, my mother's empty chair. But nothing felt the same. I sat in that chair until sunrise, hardly moving, trying to process what had happened. When the morning light finally filled the room, I wondered if I had dreamed the whole thing. But I knew I hadn't. Something had fundamentally shifted in me. The grief was still there, but it no longer felt like an abyss threatening to swallow me. Instead, it felt like a doorway I had walked through. A transformation was beginning. I could feel it in my bones. In the days that followed, I kept waiting for the memory to fade, for doubt to set in completely. But instead, the experience only became clearer in my mind. Colors seemed more vivid. Music affected me more deeply. And most significantly, my perspective on death had completely transformed. I no longer saw it as an ending, but as a transition, a passage from one form of existence to another. The fear that had gripped me since my mother's diagnosis began to loosen its hold. Not because I wasn't still sad, but because I understood something deeper now. I found myself drawn to spiritual books I would have scoffed at before, about near-death experiences, about encounters with angels, about the nature of consciousness. I realized many others had experiences similar to mine, different in the details, but similar in essence. I began to meditate daily, hoping to reconnect with that presence. The angel didn't return, at least not in the same form. But sometimes, in those quiet moments, I would feel that same warmth, that same sense of being held in a larger love. Within weeks, I found myself making dramatic changes in my life. I quit my corporate job. The work that once seemed so important now felt empty. I started volunteering at a grief support center, sitting with people in their darkest moments, not trying to fix their pain, just being present with them. Eventually, I trained to become a counselor myself. I wanted to help others find their way through their darkest moments, not by denying the pain, but by finding meaning within it. Just as the angel had said, your pain has carved spaces in you that can now be filled with light. The first time I sat with a client who had just lost her husband, I recognized the look in her eyes, that sense of being utterly alone in the universe. I didn't tell her about my angel, but I could share the truth I had learned. That grief is the price we pay for love. And that love doesn't end with death. As I worked with more people, I began to notice something remarkable. Those who suffered the most deeply often had the greatest capacity for joy and compassion. Once they moved through their grief, it was exactly as the angel had described. Expansion through contraction, growth through loss. I remember one client in particular, a young man who had lost his twin brother. He came to me angry at God, angry at the universe, for taking the person he loved most. We worked together for months. One day he came in different. Something had shifted. He told me he had dreamed of his brother. In the dream, his brother was surrounded by light and told him it was time to live for both of them. He woke up feeling his brother's presence, not as a memory, but as a living force. I've seen this pattern repeat itself countless times. People shattered by loss, who somehow find their way to a deeper understanding, a more profound connection to life. They don't get over their grief, they grow through it. They are transformed by it. I've never told this story publicly before. For years, I kept it to myself, afraid people would think I was crazy, or making it up for attention, or trying to profit from others' pain and hope. But recently, I've started to realize that keeping this experience to myself might be selfish. If my story can bring even a small measure of comfort or hope to someone else who's suffering, then I should share it. I don't expect everyone to believe me. I'm not trying to convert anyone to a particular religion or belief system. I'm simply sharing what happened to me as honestly as I can. And here's what I know for certain. Whatever happens after we die, we are not alone in this universe. There is more to reality than what we can see or measure. And love, real, unconditional love, is the fundamental force that connects everything. The angel told me that pain carves spaces in us that can be filled with light. I've thought about those words almost every day since. When I work with people who are grieving, I see it happening. How their suffering breaks them open, and in that brokenness, they become more compassionate, more present, more alive. I don't know why I was granted this experience. I wasn't especially deserving. I wasn't a particularly spiritual person. I wasn't looking for signs or wonders. I was just a person in pain, reaching out in the darkness. But I've come to believe it wasn't just for me. It was meant to be shared. There's something I haven't told you yet about that night. Something the angel showed me that I've kept to myself until now. It has to do with why certain people come into our lives at specific moments, and how what seems like random chance is actually part of a larger pattern. When the angel raised its hand and showed me those connections, those threads linking all beings together, I saw something else too. I saw that every interaction we have, every conversation, every small kindness, every moment of connection, sends ripples through those threads. I saw how my mother's life had touched hundreds of others, and how those people had touched hundreds more. An ever-expanding web of influence and connection. None of us ever truly die. because the energy of our love and actions continues to move through the world long after our physical forms are gone. That's when I understood what the angel meant by, "You are more than you know." We think we're separate individuals, moving through life alone, but we're more like nodes in a vast network, each of us essential, each of us connected to the whole. After the angel left, I fell into the deepest sleep of my life. When I woke the next morning, I felt different, physically different, like my body was humming at a different frequency. Colors were more vivid, sounds more clear, food tasted more intense, but the biggest change was in how I felt toward other people. It was like I could see a light in everyone I met, sometimes dim, sometimes bright, but always there. The same light the angel had shown me, the light that connects us all. I found myself smiling at strangers, striking up conversations with people I would have ignored before, listening more deeply when others spoke. I could feel their joy, their pain, their hopes, almost as if they were my own. One afternoon, about a week after my encounter, I was at the grocery store. The cashier was an older woman. She looked tired, worn down by life. As she scanned my items, I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I could see that light in her, dimmed by exhaustion and worry, but still glowing. I smiled and asked how her day was going, really meaning it, not just as a social formality. She looked surprised. Then her face softened. "Not great," she said. "My husband's in the hospital." We ended up talking for several minutes about her husband's heart condition, about her fear of losing him, about her struggle to work while caring for him. Before I left, I touched her hand gently. "You're not alone," I said. The very words the angel had said to me. Tears filled her eyes, and for a moment I swear I could see that light in her grow brighter. "Thank you," she whispered. I needed to hear that today. That small interaction taught me something important. We can be angels for each other, in small moments, in simple words of comfort or understanding. We can help each other remember that we are never truly alone. Over the next few months, I found myself drawn to places of suffering. Hospitals, nursing homes, homeless shelters, not out of some morbid fascination, but because I felt called to bring whatever light I could, to remind people of their connection to something larger. I started volunteering at a hospice center, sitting with the dying, holding their hands, listening to their stories. Many were afraid, not just of death itself, but of being forgotten, of their lives not having mattered. I would listen to their memories, their regrets, their hopes for those they were leaving behind. And sometimes, when it felt right, I would share a bit of what the angel had shown me, about how we are all connected, about how love never truly dies, about how our actions continue to affect others long after we're gone. I remember one elderly man. He had no family left, no visitors. He was terrified of dying alone. I spent hours by his bedside, just talking, just being present. The night he died, I was there. He was drifting in and out of consciousness, but suddenly his eyes flew open. He looked past me to the corner of the room, his face filled with wonder. "Do you see that?" he whispered. "The light?" I turned to look. I couldn't see anything unusual, but when I looked back at him, his face had transformed. All the fear was gone, replaced by a look of absolute peace. "It's beautiful," he said. Then he closed his eyes and took his last breath. I sat with his body for a long time afterward, not sad exactly, but filled with a strange mix of awe and gratitude for having witnessed his transition, for having been with him at that sacred threshold. That experience convinced me that what I had seen was real, that the angel's message was true, that death is not an ending, but a doorway, a return to that light that connects us all. Since then, I've worked with hundreds of grieving people, each with their own unique pain, their own unique journey. I never push my beliefs on them, never tell them what to think about death or what comes after. But I do share one thing the angel taught me, that our pain can become our purpose, that our deepest wounds can become doorways to greater compassion, that what breaks us open can also make us more whole. I've seen it happen again and again. A mother who lost her child to cancer, who now runs a foundation helping other families affected by childhood illness. A man whose wife died in a car accident, who now counsels others dealing with sudden loss. A woman who lost her sister to suicide, who now works in suicide prevention. These people don't deny their pain. They've used it as fuel, as motivation, as a way to bring more light into the world, just as the angel said we could. Some days I still doubt my experience. I wonder if it was just my grief-stricken mind, creating a comforting hallucination. But then I remember how it felt, that absolute certainty in the moment, that sense of being in the presence of something vastly larger than myself, yet somehow also intimately connected to me. And I look at how my life has changed since that night, how I found purpose in helping others navigate their pain, how I've learned to see the light in everyone I meet, even those who can't see it in themselves. And I know that whatever happened that night was real, at least real in the ways that matter. Sometimes people ask me if I'm afraid of death now, after what I experienced. The honest answer is no, not anymore. I'm not in a hurry to die. I love my life. I love the work I do. I love the connections I've made. But I no longer see death as the enemy, as the ultimate loss. I see it as a transformation, a returning, a coming home to that light the angel showed me. That doesn't mean I don't still miss my mother. I do every day. But the quality of that missing has changed. It's no longer just emptiness and loss. It's also connection and love. I feel her presence sometimes, not as a ghost, but as a part of that greater light. About a year after my encounter, I was sitting in my garden. It was spring. The flowers were blooming. Birds were singing. I closed my eyes, feeling the sun on my face. Suddenly, I felt that familiar warmth, that sense of presence, not as intense as with the angel, but unmistakable. And I knew without a doubt that my mother was there, not physically, but in some real way. I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, but I felt her love envelop me, as real as the sunshine on my skin. I sat there for hours, crying and laughing, talking to her in my mind, feeling her response not in words, but in waves of love and reassurance. Since then, I've had similar experiences, not often, but at important moments, when I'm struggling with a decision, when I'm feeling lost or alone, when I need guidance. That sense of presence returns, reminding me that I'm part of something larger, that I'm never truly alone. I've learned to pay attention to dreams, to synchronicities, to those moments when the veil between worlds seems thinner, not out of superstition, but because I've come to believe that the reality we perceive with our five senses is just a small fraction of what actually exists. I'm not special. I don't have any unique powers or abilities. I'm just someone who had an extraordinary experience. That opened my eyes to what was always there, the connections between all living things, the light that animates everything, the love that never dies. I share my story now, not to convince anyone of anything, but to offer hope to those who are suffering, to suggest that there might be more to reality than what we can see or touch, that our loved ones who have died might not be as far away as we think, that we are held in a love greater than we can imagine. The angel showed me something else that night, something about time, how it doesn't work the way we think it does. From the angel's perspective, past, present, and future exist simultaneously, like different rooms in the same house. We move through them one by one, but they're all there, all real, all now. This means that everyone who has ever lived, everyone we've ever loved and lost, they're not gone. They're just in a different room, a room we can't access yet, but one day will. I find great comfort in this idea that no moment of love is ever truly lost, that every connection we make, every life we touch, exists forever in the fabric of reality. When I work with people who are grieving, I don't usually share all these details. I meet them where they are, with their beliefs, their understanding, their pain. But what I do share is the most important lesson the angel taught me, that love transcends death, that our connections to each other continue even when physical presence ends, that the love we feel for those who have died is not just a memory, but a continuing relationship that evolves and changes, but never truly ends. I've seen how this perspective transforms grief, not removing the pain entirely. That wouldn't be healthy or natural, but changing its quality from a pain that diminishes us to a pain that expands us, makes us more compassionate, more awake to the preciousness of life, more aware of the connections that sustain us. The most beautiful transformation I've witnessed is when someone moves through their grief to a place where they can sense the continued presence of their loved one, not as wishful thinking, but as a lived reality, a knowing that transcends doubt. One woman I worked with lost her young daughter to leukemia. Her grief was devastating. For months, she could barely function, but gradually, she began to notice things. Butterflies that would appear at significant moments, dreams where her daughter seemed incredibly present and real, songs on the radio that had special meaning to them both. At first, she dismissed these as coincidences, her mind seeking patterns and randomness, but they kept happening with increasing frequency and specificity until one day she couldn't deny it anymore. Her daughter was reaching out to her, not from nowhere, but from somewhere. This realization didn't eliminate her grief, but it transformed it from unbearable anguish to a bittersweet connection. She still missed her daughter's physical presence terribly, but she no longer felt that her daughter was completely gone. She went on to start a support group for parents who had lost children, not based on any particular religious belief, but on the shared experience of continuing bonds, of finding ways to maintain a relationship with their children. Even after death, I've seen this pattern repeated countless times. People who find in the depths of their grief a new relationship with those they've lost, not as a replacement for what was, but as an evolution of their connection, one that transcends physical boundaries. The angel told me that love cannot be diminished, not by distance, not by time, not even by death. And my experience working with the grieving has confirmed this truth. Love doesn't end when someone dies. It changes form, but its essence remains. Perhaps the most profound truth the angel shared is that we are all connected by the same light, the same essence, the same source. When we truly understand this, we can never feel completely alone again, even in our darkest moments, even in our most painful losses. We are held in a web of connection that transcends our limited understanding, that upholds us when we cannot stand on our own, that guides us home when we are lost. I don't know why I was granted this experience with the angel. I wasn't seeking it, wasn't prepared for it, but I'm grateful beyond words that it happened, not just for the comfort it brought me, but for how it's allowed me to bring comfort to others. If you're listening to this and you're grieving, if you feel alone in your pain, please hear me when I say, you are not alone. You have never been alone. The love you feel for those you've lost is still connecting you to them in ways you might not be able to see or understand right now, but that are real nonetheless. Your grief is the shadow of your love, and like all shadows, it points to something real, something that cannot be destroyed, even by death. The angel showed me something that night about why we're here, about the purpose of human existence. We're here to love, to connect, to grow through our experiences, both joyful and painful. We're here to learn how to see the light in each other, how to recognize our essential oneness, despite all apparent differences. We're here to remember what we already know at some deep level, that we are more than our physical bodies, more than our temporary identities, more than our fleeting thoughts and emotions. We are expressions of that same light I saw in the angel, that same love that holds the universe together. We just forget sometimes, get lost in our separateness, our fear, our pain, but moments of grace remind us, sometimes through angels, sometimes through the kindness of strangers, sometimes through the beauty of nature, sometimes through the love we feel for each other. These moments lift the veil briefly, allow us to see what's always been there, the interconnectedness of all things, the love that never dies, the light that shines in every heart. I've dedicated my life to creating these moments for others, to helping people find meaning in their suffering, to reminding them of their connection to something larger than themselves. It's not always easy work. Sometimes the pain I witness is overwhelming, but I remember what the angel said about expansion through contraction, growth through loss, and I see it happening again and again. People becoming more compassionate through their suffering, more connected through their losses, more alive through their encounters with death. There's something else the angel showed me that night, something about forgiveness, how it's not just a nice idea, but a practical necessity for spiritual growth. When we hold on to resentment, onto anger, onto blame, we block that light from flowing through us. I saw how my own resentments were like dams in a river, stopping the natural flow of life and love. The angel didn't tell me to forgive. It showed me what happens when I don't, how I cut myself off from the very connection I'm seeking. In the weeks following my encounter, I found myself reaching out to people I had conflicts with. Old grudges suddenly seemed pointless, petty disagreements not worth the energy they consume. I didn't do this out of moral obligation, but out of a clear seeing of how much these resentments were costing me. One person in particular, my father. We had been estranged for years, after he left my mother when I was a teenager. I had never forgiven him for that abandonment, but after my experience with the angel, I saw him differently, not just as my father who had failed me, but as a soul on his own journey, with his own wounds, his own fears, his own capacity for growth and love. I called him. It was awkward at first, years of silence creating a wall between us, but gradually we began to talk, really talk, about what had happened all those years ago, about the pain we had both carried. I didn't immediately forgive him. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process, a journey, but I opened the door to possibility, and over time, we rebuilt a relationship, different from what it had been, but perhaps more honest, more mature, more compassionate. When he died 2 years later, I was by his bedside, holding his hand, no longer consumed by old hurts, but present with him in his final journey, grateful for the reconciliation we had found, for the healing we had both experienced. That's another truth the angel showed me, that it's never too late for healing, never too late for forgiveness, never too late to choose love over fear, to choose connection over separation. As I've grown older, as I've worked with more people in pain, I've come to see that most of our suffering comes from forgetting who we really are, from identifying with our separate selves, our limited stories, rather than with the larger light that connects us all. The angel showed me that this forgetting is part of the human journey, not a mistake, but a necessary experience. We forget so that we can remember. We separate so that we can reconnect. We experience darkness so that we can recognize light. This understanding has helped me be more patient with myself and others, more compassionate toward our struggles and failings, more hopeful about our capacity for growth and transformation, because I've seen it happen in myself, in my clients, in strangers I meet briefly but deeply. I've seen how the most wounded can become the most whole, how the most broken can become the most compassionate, how the most lost can become guides for others. The angel told me I would doubt the experience happened, and I have, many times, in my more rational moments, my more skeptical moods.